Hi there, Gemma here from the Online College of Art and Design. Hope everyone is well. I am just going to do a quick chat about task 6. It's the second part, which is all about photography. So my last video spoke about how to do the proportions of the face, and we did a quick sketch on the different rules of proportion. And when we understand those rules, we can then apply that. I know it changes because every face is different, but the general rules will always apply. So it really helps with observation of faces, because observation, when we're talking about portraiture, is really tricky. And a lot of our students do struggle to observe faces without that initial run through of how proportions work, kind of in a bit of a scientific way, but then obviously we kind of put our own take on it, and we develop a way of getting our self-portraits across with meaning and personality and things like that. So it's not all about being able to draw faces like for like, but when we have the proportions right and we understand them, especially our students who want to go on to be illustrators, which many of them do, you know which parts of the face to exaggerate and how to do that. So there's lots of benefits to learning about proportion, and that is the first part of our task 6 assignment, and we spend quite a lot of time on that in our lessons. We might spend a week or two. Now this second part is then actually our own reference for the drawing. Okay, so we want to then get students to draw a face in black and white. We do a lot of black and white drawing because what that does is when you eliminate color, you can focus on form, and you can focus on where the shadows are and where the highlights are, and you don't have to worry so much about actually producing those tones in color. Okay, so when you just strip all color from things, you focus on the raw subject and object you are drawing. Okay, so we always do this, whether it's a still life, whether it's obviously the faces. So whatever we do black and white first to learn about the topic. Okay, so that's we kind of start portraiture off in black and white. Okay, so we've done the proportions. That's the first part. The second part is getting a black and white image reference so that we can draw from it. Okay, if you're doing yourself and it's kind of just a typical front view, then obviously having your own face and being able to look in the mirror and draw it accurately that way does help, because you get to really look and look up close and move your face around to see the different angles and everything. When you do it in real life, so the subject is in front of you, it does improve the quality of your drawing. But we're going to just talk about today how to do a reference image that you can then draw from. Okay, so this is part of task 6. So I've got a resource. I'm just going to pop this up so you get to see the kinds of things that we do in lessons. This is part of a resource that I've used for a lesson. These lessons probably go on for 2 to 3 weeks. Okay, photography is an art form in itself, isn't it? So when we do photography, we kind of do learn quite a lot of techniques about composition, lighting, so important, lighting, how to create those atmospheres. And we always usually start those kinds of things with inspiration. So if you just type in black and white photography or portrait photography, get yourself an image board together of the kinds of images that you like, because that will give you lots of ideas when you first start out on what to take for your own photo. Okay, now there is a lot of equipment. Okay, we could talk about filters, lenses, all these kinds of things, real fancy cameras, and if you've got them, then great, because you're going to get a really good image, because it changes the lighting, the focus, all those sorts of things. But it's not essential. Okay, we can do this very simply with camera phones or whatever basic equipment that you have. Okay, so this is what we do with our students. They don't need anything fancy, and this is just a reference photo. So when you see some of these examples, you'll see what we'll aim for and what some of our students end up with, and then you can kind of add your creative twist to them. Okay, so Photography then, okay, taking a good photo. So let me just go through these pages. I've mentioned very briefly getting some inspiration. Now, when we're doing these incredible, and you see these incredible artworks from people, some are incredibly difficult to draw. So like this one, Dylan Andrews, a student from the University of West of England. So we got this as a piece of inspiration. The way that this student creates shadows on their subject is really cool. And it could be inspirational, but also we do have to think that if this is a beginning to learn to draw and doing the basics, this might be a bit of a step up, but it still adds to having fun with photography. So I would recommend having a play around with light and shadow and all those kinds of things, but also keep in the back of your mind that you want to draw this. And if you're starting at the very beginning, you want to keep the drawing that the image that you actually end up drawing quite simple, because less is more, and we won't learn very much if we end up spending hours and hours going over and over the same thing and getting bored and not enjoying what we're doing. So it's more about learning and doing something manageable. But let's just think about photography and how cool it could be. So when you see images like this, it is inspirational because you think, wow, the possibilities are endless, all the shadows, all the exciting things that you can do with lights, and it is fun to play around with it, because photography, as I said, it's an art form in itself. And if your final piece ends up being a photography piece for this, then it's wonderful, isn't it? Because you've learned about composition, you've tried out all these new lighting effects, you've gone on apps and added filters and done some creative things with it, and you could end up with something really quite cool just in itself. But then to go on and draw it, you might just maybe draw an element of it, or half the face, or zoom in, or do something completely different. Okay, but inspiration is important. So this is something that we talk about in our lessons, and we get some really cool images. Now, some of the other things that you just need to notice are things like the background and expressions on their faces. And when you actually are setting off your photograph, if it's of yourself, then you want to think about how you want to be seen in your drawing. So is there an element of your personality you want to come through? Are you going to pull some silly faces? Are you going to have something particular in the background? Are you going to have props, hats, glasses? I mean, what is it that kind of will give you some character and personality in this drawing? So that's an element that you can add to your work. And students who are bit further on in their development will want to do artwork that has a bit more of a purpose and a meaning. And when you do it for yourself, many artists do self-portraits for that very reason. How do you want the world to see you, kind of thing. So there are many, many different strategies and ways: pulling faces, doing expressions, having particular clothes or props or something in the background, a pet or whatever it might be. And that can obviously be manipulated and digitally done as well. I mean, if you don't angle behind you, then you could superimpose one, or you could have an image of you and an image of a jungle, and when you draw it, you draw both of them. Okay, so you don't have to create the image that you then end up painting, if you know what I mean. You can keep it separate. So there are so many ways that you can do this. So what you want to aim for is, here are some of the pages of kind of GCSE level art. So when they experiment with just facial features, the different elements of the face first. That's what we'll go on to in my next demonstration. I'll do some drawings of eyes and nose, and give you some tips on how to actually draw those facial features. But you need the reference image first, don't you? You need that inspirational image. And yes, we can go on Google and we can find anyone. We could do a celebrity. We could do, an artwork from another artist, and there are many ways. But if you get your own source, if you take your own photograph, not only are you more connected to it, but in terms of qualifications, like what we're doing at OCAD, it gives more credit to your work, because you're able to produce something unique, and even the subject comes from something that you've created. So we try and avoid these secondary sources, although for inspiration and for samples obviously there's nothing wrong with copying what exists already, but that next level is picking up a camera and trying to create those yourself. Okay, so this is kind of what we're heading towards, to create pages like this of experiments. So we want the images to kind of go with those. Okay, so you can see lots of reference photos and then the students draw from them. Okay, so just to give you a bit of context of where we're heading. So the photo ideally has high contrast and tones. So with black and white, we want to be looking at form. It doesn't matter the position, whether you're going to do a profile or a forward on view. It can convey a mood. It's up to your atmosphere about the subject and be personal, as I said, but that is up to you. This is obviously done professionally with like really good lighting and screens and things like that. We don't need to do that because there are some really cool effects that you can even do on your camera phone. So once you've taken an image, you could go into the edit and you can play around with the contrast and things like that. If there's something in the background that you don't want there, then you just won't draw it. Of course, it doesn't matter if you've got something behind you that you don't want in the image, the final one. We recommend going by a window because that natural light gives the incredible shadows and, you know, makes you look better in that context. So we do try and say by a window. It doesn't mean the window has to be in the image. It just means have bright natural light as a source, but artificial light also is fine. It just depends on where that's angled because it can make your face look distorted, or you know, some photos we don't like because the shadows are kind of in the wrong place and you wish the light was just a bit higher or whatever. So play around with lighting, artificial light. We do candles and things like that, so we get some really cool effects. And it is just about playing around, turning those photos black and white, up in the contrast to make sure you've got this really cool image to work from. And once you've got those references, we can move on to the next step. Okay, so here's some OCAD student work. So some ideas and playing around with the photos of what you can do. This is some work down the bottom of the actual drawing of one of our students. So this is kind of what we are aiming for. Okay, but you know, our students need to experiment and they do lots of different effects, lots of different filters, and they play around with them to get these references that they then want to draw from. Okay, so hopefully that's kind of given you a bit of an overview and given you some tips on what you could do for this part of the task. So yeah, play around with it, have some fun with your camera. You could do someone else, it doesn't have to be you. And again, just tell them, you know, don't worry about the photo itself because you're going to turn it into an artwork. So it becomes something entirely different after. These photos are just references. And if you want to take several photos and have them all on the table and you work from all of them at the same time, then that's fine. I mean, some students love photoshopping and, you know, putting them all together to create some images. But overall, what we ask for task 6 from students is that they've learnt the proportions of a face. Okay, so they've got an idea of how the structure works, ready for their observation, and they've played around with black and white photography. They've thought about composition. As I say, we have 2-3 weeks worth of lessons where we learn about rule of thirds and things. I mean, a subject in itself, so you can really research a lot here. But if we keep it basic, we're talking black and white photography, maybe some personality, you know, some good lighting, some expressions on the face that, you know, put across something that just adds that little bit of personality to the work. And yeah, play around with the filters, get the contrast really strong, so you've got this really good black to white tonal image. And then next time I come online, we'll actually start drawing from these images and we'll try some charcoal, so you get to see how that works. Really nice media. You can go big. We're going to work maybe up to about A2 for that kind of portrait, or you could do pencil. Time consuming, very neat, detailed, but beautiful outcome. So it's up to you then kind of which direction you take it. But I'll show you how we then sample with media to get the the different results and, you know, plan towards, say, an outcome by the end of that, and that would be task 7. So that's part of our skill builder, we call it. That's our program. So this is what I'm going to give you this week, okay? And during next week, I'll come back online and we'll do some sketches from those drawings, and I'll teach you tips on how to draw facial features. I know we have lots of followers on our Facebook pages posting loads on portrait. So many that already are so good with their proportions and can sketch a face seemingly rather easy, and others you're having a go, but your knowledge of proportions and try again, the difference will be huge. Okay, so there you go, that's task 6. We do have photography courses at OCAD. We have a top photographer who is our tutor. You might have seen us talking to him on one of our, he featured in Vogue Italia. He is amazing. So we have from really beginner photography courses right up to getting ready for your degree in photography. So, you know, some students in 2 years go from no experience in photography to doing it at university. So it really is a great off as a subject. Get in touch with me, and I can let you know what kind of courses we can offer you. Drawing and painting, if you just want to talk to me about anything that you see, or you would like to just send in some work and get some advice on your progress and get some tips, then feel free. That's what our Facebook page is for, to be sharing and getting lots of advice as you learn to draw and paint. But if you want to talk to me, miss.graham@chsonline.org.uk. If you need to ask anything about the courses or want to ask about anything that you've seen or heard in one of our videos. But I'm going to leave you with that. Task 6, part 2, photography. Have fun, get your reference photos, and I'll be back in a few days and we will do some drawing. So thank you very much for joining me. Hopefully this will be of huge benefit and a nice resource for you to refer to when you're coming onto creating your own references, first-hand studies for your artwork. So thanks for tuning in. I will be back very soon, and take care everyone. Bye for now from OCAD. Bye.